From the outside looking in, our marriage was the picture of perfection. We'd been together for a decade, 10 long years of shared memories, laughter, and what I thought was love. As a private investigator, I was trained to spot the details that others might miss, but I never thought I'd need to turn those skills inward, on my own life. For years, I believed we were happy. We had the house, the vacations, the moments where it felt like we were in sync. But then, slowly, something began to shift. At first, it was subtle. Little things. I noticed she'd stay up later than usual, her phone clutched tightly in her hand, her eyes glued to the screen. When I asked who she was texting, she'd brush it off as, just a friend. But those late-night texts became more frequent, her smile more distant. Then came the absences. She suddenly had more work trips, often with little to no notice. It didn't feel right. She'd always been transparent about her schedule, and now she was leaving with vague explanations that barely held water. I tried to ignore the growing pit in my stomach, convincing myself I was overthinking it. After all, I knew the toll suspicion could take on a person, and I didn't want to be the paranoid husband who saw ghosts in every shadow. Still, her behavior was changing in ways I couldn't ignore. She became secretive, guarding her phone like it was a lifeline, and her once loving demeanor grew cold. The woman I had shared my life with, my dreams, was slipping away, and I didn't even know why. But I wasn't just any man. I was a private investigator. If something was happening, I would find out. However, instead of confronting her immediately, I made a choice, a calculated one. I wouldn't act on suspicion alone. I wouldn't let my emotions dictate my next move. I would do what I did best, gather evidence, build a case, and find the truth. Because when I confronted her, I wanted to be certain there would be no escape. This wasn't just about trust anymore, it was about knowing, beyond a shadow of a doubt, what was happening in the shadows of our marriage. I had a plan. If there was one thing I'd learned from years on the job, it was that emotions could cloud judgment. I couldn't afford that. Not now. If my wife was betraying me, I needed more than gut feelings. I needed cold, hard facts. The first step was subtle. A GPS tracker slipped into her car. It wasn't the kind of move a husband should ever have to make, but this wasn't about trust anymore, it was about survival. I needed to know where she was going, who she was meeting, and whether my suspicions held any weight. Over the next few days, her work trips seemed harmless enough, but there were anomalies, hours spent in locations that had nothing to do with her job. Strange restaurants and unfamiliar addresses, places she had no reason to be. But that wasn't enough to confront her. I needed more. Next came her phone. I wasn't a novice when it came to tracking technology. I accessed her call logs remotely, noting unfamiliar numbers that popped up over and over. Then, I found what I was looking for: long, intimate conversations, dozens of messages exchanged late into the night. But I still needed to see more. I needed her to slip up. And she did. One night, she left her phone unattended for a few precious minutes, and I seized the opportunity. In those brief moments, I uncovered text messages that made my blood run cold. Explicit words, plans for meetups, even confessions of love to a man I'd never heard of before. Her betrayal was spelled out in black and white, and it hit me like a freight train. But instead of letting the anger consume me, I stored every message, took screenshots, and saved them to a secret file. This wasn't over yet. Over the following weeks, I built my case. I followed her discreetly, capturing photos and videos of her meeting him in secret. I watched from a distance as they laughed, kissed, and disappeared into hotels together. Each piece of evidence was more damning than the last, but I stayed calm, methodical. My training had taught me the value of patience, and I wasn't about to blow my cover by confronting her too soon. I had the truth. And now, it was all about timing. I didn't want a screaming match in the middle of the night, some emotionally charged blowout that would leave us both wrecked. No, I wanted this to be clean. Precise. Just like any other job I'd worked. And the perfect moment? Our wedding anniversary. I'd been waiting for weeks, and the day was fast approaching. She had no idea what was coming. She still thought she was getting away with it, playing me for a fool. But I had the evidence. And on that day, I would make sure she understood exactly what she'd done, and that there was no way out. The anniversary was just around the corner, and she had no idea what was coming. She was playing her part perfectly, smiling sweetly, acting as if nothing was wrong. She believed she had fooled me, that her affair was hidden safely behind the mask of our marriage. Little did she know, I had been planning this day for weeks, and it wasn't going to be the romantic celebration she imagined. I made sure the morning started perfectly, just as she'd expect from the loving husband she thought I still was. I'd arranged a luxurious gift, something she'd been eyeing for months, a diamond bracelet, elegantly wrapped in a velvet box. Her face lit up with excitement as I handed it to her, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. "Oh, it's beautiful," she gasped, wrapping her arms around me in a tight embrace. I could almost feel her relief. She thought she had me wrapped around her finger, that I was still the gullible, doting husband. She kissed me with a warmth that felt so false now, but I played along, smiling back, biding my time. The day passed without incident. I made sure everything was perfect, flowers, reservations at her favorite restaurant, and the kind of small talk that made her think we were celebrating another year of bliss. Inside, though, I was just waiting for the evening. I had the real gift ready. The one that would unravel her entire world. As we sat down for dinner that night, she was glowing. The candlelight flickered over her face as she reached for her wine glass, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the texts, the lies, the betrayal. No, she deserved everything that was coming. I waited until the dessert arrived, her favorite, of course, before I pulled out the neatly bound folder I had prepared. It looked like a simple anniversary card at first, and she smiled as I handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked, intrigued. "Open it," I said, my voice steady, calm. She opened the folder, expecting some heartfelt note or romantic surprise. Instead, her face turned pale as she flipped through the pages. Page after page of photos, screenshots, and records of her secret meetings. Every lie she had told, every affair she had tried to hide, laid out in meticulous detail. The color drained from her cheeks as she realized what was happening. What is this?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's the truth," I replied, leaning back in my chair. "Happy anniversary." She looked at me, her eyes wide with panic, flipping frantically through the dossier as if searching for a way out, but there was none. I had covered every angle. Every affair, every lie, every betrayal was documented, time-stamped, and organized. There was no room for denial, no excuses she could offer that would undo the damage. "You've been cheating on me for months," I said, my voice level and composed. "And now, everyone's going to know. You thought you could play me for a fool, but I've been watching you. Every step. Every move." Her hands trembled as she held the papers, tears welling up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. The woman who sat across from me wasn't the woman I had loved for 10 years. She was someone else, someone who had lied and deceived me. And now, she was about to pay the price. The moment the truth hit her, it was as if the world stopped. Her eyes darted across the pages, disbelief painted across her face. Page after page, image after image, the reality of her betrayal unraveled before her. She turned pale, her hands shaking as she tried to process the damning evidence I had laid before her. "I can explain," she started, her voice trembling, but the words died in her throat. There was no explanation that could erase what she had done. No excuse that could justify the months of deceit, the lies she had woven to cover up her affair. I stayed silent, watching her crumble under the weight of the truth. She stammered, her gaze flicking up to meet mine, but I wasn't the man she thought she could manipulate anymore. The calm, composed mask I wore only made her panic more. "Please, it's not what it looks like," she whispered, her voice barely audible as her eyes filled with tears. "It was a mistake." I leaned back in my chair, the sound of the restaurant fading into the background as I fixed her with a steady gaze. "A mistake?" I said, my tone even, cold. "You didn't make a mistake, you made choices." Repeatedly. She opened her mouth to protest, but I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses. The dossier in front of her was airtight. Every secret text, every secret meeting, every lie was meticulously documented. There was no wiggle room, no way to talk her way out of this. But I didn't stop there. I had made sure that her betrayal wouldn't just stay between us. I had sent the same dossier to a select few people in her life, her closest friends, the ones she had lied to just as much as she had lied to me. By the time she realized what was happening, they already knew. Her phone buzzed on the table, her friends' texts flooding in with shock, disbelief, and disgust. She reached for it with trembling hands, but I stopped her. "Don't bother," I said, my voice steady. "They already know everything. Just like I do." Her eyes widened, her lips parting in a silent gasp as the full impact of what I had done sank in. She was trapped, caught in a web of her own making, and there was no escape. Her social circle, the people she valued so much, now saw her for who she truly was, a liar, a cheater, someone who couldn't be trusted. And I had made sure they knew it all. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no pity. This was her doing, and she was about to face the consequences. "This marriage is over," I said, my voice as sharp as a knife. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. The divorce papers are being drawn up as we speak. It'll be clean, fast, and completely in my favor." She tried to speak, but no words came. What could she say? There was no arguing with the cold, hard facts in front of her, no way to undo the damage she had caused. "I've taken care of everything," I continued. "The house, the accounts, you'll be left with nothing. And as for your reputation? Well, I think we both know what's going to happen." Her face crumpled, the weight of her betrayal crushing her from all sides. She had lost everything, our marriage, her friends, her dignity, and there was no coming back from this. As I stood to leave, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with regret, but it was too late for that. The man she thought she had fooled was gone. In his place was someone who had seen the truth and made sure she paid for every lie. The divorce proceedings went exactly as I had planned. With the mountain of evidence I had gathered, there was no way she could contest it. Every lie, every secret meeting, every moment of infidelity had been meticulously documented and presented to the court. Her lawyer barely put up a fight. How could they, when everything was laid bare? I walked into the courtroom with confidence, knowing that the outcome was already secured. The judge took one look at the evidence, text messages, photos, bank statements showing her lavish spending during her secret trysts, and it was clear who would come out on top. In the end, the ruling was swift and decisive. I was awarded full ownership of the house, our savings, and my assets remained untouched. She, on the other hand, left with nothing but the clothes on her back and the shame that followed her. The very life she had betrayed was now out of her reach, and the world she had built with deceit had crumbled. It wasn't just about the material things. Sure, keeping the house and my savings was satisfying, but the real victory was seeing the regret etched into her face as she realized what she had lost. The life we had built together was gone, and all that remained for her were the broken pieces of her own making. Her fall from grace was swift. Word of her affair spread quickly through our social circle, thanks to the dossier I had shared. Friends who once adored her turned their backs, disgusted by her betrayal. She became a social pariah, someone no longer invited to gatherings or events. The looks of admiration she once received were replaced by whispers and glares. Her new life was one of isolation and regret, her reputation in ruins. But as for me, I moved on, stronger, wiser, and with a renewed sense of purpose. The bitterness I had once felt melted away as I rebuilt my life, free from the lies that had suffocated me for so long. I had won, not just in the legal sense, but emotionally and mentally as well. I had faced betrayal and come out victorious on the other side. There was a certain peace in knowing that justice had been served. My ex-wife was left to face the consequences of her actions, while I walked away with my dignity, my home, and my future intact. And in the end, that was the sweetest revenge of all. I had been through hell, but I had come out on top, stronger than ever. She had lost everything, and I had gained a new beginning. There was no clearer victory than that. And that, my friends, is how justice was served. Our detective used his skills, his patience, and a lot of determination to ensure that the truth came out, and that he walked away victorious. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales of betrayal, revenge, and redemption, make sure to hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to Only Stories About Men for more gripping stories of men who rise above the odds, defeat betrayal, and claim their well-deserved victories. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.